because I'm not just Peter Parker. I'm Spider-Man.
Hey there, Marvelous Spider-Man fans, welcome to the channel. In today's video, we're talking about the reviews of Spider-Man Brand New Day. Let's take a look. While Spider-Man Brand New Day is supposed to be a street-level cinematic adventure, the movie also stars John Bernthal as the Punisher and Sadie Sink as the villain, who's not really a villain, but a very famous Marvel character with psychic abilities, and in doing so, the movie couldn't help reminding us of the context and the universe in which it's set in. That is, the deal between Sony Entertainment and Marvel Studios. Naturally, the film tries to remain street-level, but not for long, not in its entirety, and that's probably the only flaw in this new Spider-Man installment, which might be the best one since Homecoming, but if you ask me, I found it to be much better than Homecoming. But let's go beyond what I personally think of the movie and check out what the major reviews are saying about Brand New Day.
If you're gonna do something, you better do it now!
So, Spider-Man Brand New Day had one very difficult job of following No Way Home, but at the same time, it had to ensure that it wasn't quite dragging Peter Parker back into another multiverse circus. I mean, No Way Home had such a success mostly because it had 3 Spideys instead of just one. But more than being a sequel to No Way Home, Brand New Day has to also prove that Tom Holland's Spider-Man could survive without 3 generations of web-slingers. Based on the first reviews, it seems the movie mostly pulled that off. Like, many of the initial responses are positive, even with review aggregators. For instance, Rotten Tomatoes is giving it a rating over 90%, while Metacritic opened around 70, which is fairly decent for a superhero movie, as long as it's not Batman Begins or Dark Knight. These scores do not make Brand New Day an untouchable masterpiece, but they sure tell us that Marvel is once again focusing on cinematic and narrative quality, after a string of lackluster installments such as She-Hulk and even Thunderbolts. And yeah, this is quite a relief if you ask me. No Way Home ended with Peter erased from the memories of everyone he loved. MJ and Ned moved on, while Peter had been left alone with a cheap apartment, a homemade suit, and a responsibility that neither paid any bills nor offered any kind of emotional support. Brand New Day picks up 4 years later, with Peter committed to life as a full-time Spider-Man, and although people love him, he no longer has the drive to become an MIT graduate, and has become a hardcore workaholic. So much so that his urban hermit-like lifestyle and even his room are all about gadgets that can help him track crimes and criminals, and even a 3D printer that allows him to make whatever he wants, and quickly. But that's not all. The man is going through more personal changes, or should I say, physical. You see, his powers have begun to change, and he's kinda sorta losing them, thanks to an arachnid puberty. Although I must admit that Tom Holland does not have the same looks about himself when he first appeared as Spider-Man. The man's 30, and it's starting to show. The embargo on a detailed plot review was still on when the script for this video was being written, so I can't get a lot into it, but I will tell you this. The premise of Brand New Day could have become another uber-overload Marvel puzzle like No Way Home, but thankfully the plot managed to focus on Peter's loneliness as the real center of the story, at least for as long as possible. In fact, Screen Rant's Graham Gutman is calling it the best Tom Holland Spider-Man movie yet, possibly because of the film's back-to-basics approach. Having said that, several other reactions did stop short of that claim, although most of them did agree on one count, that this is a more mature and personal Peter Parker story. Tom Holland himself has bagged a lot of praise for his work. Several reactions have called this his finest work as Peter Parker, and it doesn't take a Batman to figure out why. In fact, IndieWire's David Ehrlich said this about the lead actor: Tom Holland, who can't help but appear more capable in the immediate afterglow of The Odyssey. See, Holland has always handled the youthful excitement of Spider-Man well, but this version of Peter was different, in the sense that this one was carrying more emotional baggage and was rather darker than the previous Spideys we've met, barring the one that Tobey played. In Brand New Day, Peter had to watch MJ and Ned live without him. He also knew very well that his sacrifice had protected them, but he was forced to also come to terms with the fact that in making such a sacrifice, he lost everything he ever held dear, that he was now in a miserable state and without the 2 people he really loved and wanted in his life. Curiously, some of the best moments from the movie were actually the small and short ones. Critics have really praised such scenes as Peter watching his former friends from a distance and knowing that he could never enter their lives without putting them at risk again. Now, this is definitely more personal and hurtful than another portal in the sky, and the simple reason is that all of this is happening because of a streak of poor choices that Peter himself made over a period of time and across a bunch of movies. But yeah, since Tom Holland is an excellent actor, he had the ability to sell, and very effectively so, Peter's isolation and the physical pain caused by his strange transformation. Several of the reviews also noted that Holland retained the humor quite effectively, especially in scenes where he appeared alongside the Punisher. I mean, I know how I've said that this is about Peter being sad and stuff, but the movie isn't really a 2-hour mope fest where Peter is basically staring through rainy windows. he still maintained his good old delivery speed, sarcasm, and awkward charm that has always made his version of Spider-Man attractive. Having said that, all these jokes and the maturity went hand in hand logically, because Spider-Man has always been funny mostly because his humor helped him survive fear and pain. Brand New Day understands that his wit comes from his personality rather than a need for the studio to make things funny. Another thing that several reactions also praised was the film's mix of detective mystery, psychological drama, and buddy comedy. Director Destin Daniel Cretton earned almost as much praise as Holland himself, and deservingly so. The action has repeatedly been described as more physical, more tactile, and far more stylish than much of the recent MCU output. The web-swinging sequences have used unusual angles, first-person views, and visible location work, while the fights let Spider-Man move with the speed and precision people expected from him. All in all, Mr. Cretton did not shy away from using a bit of Raimi's vision of Spider-Man while remaining true to his own style, and it almost seems like Shang-Chi was Cretton's preparation for what he did here, especially once Spider-Man faced ninjas, the Punisher, and the Hulk. The fight choreography, practical elements, and New York photography have also received praise, even from people who have problems with the script. I mean, this in itself is encouraging. Holland's Spider-Man movies have always offered great set pieces, but the direction often felt functional rather than personal. Cretton apparently gave this film a stronger visual identity with real spaces, convincing sets, and less of that weightless studio feel that had hurt several Marvel releases. Even reviews that were mixed on the story part praised how the film looked and moved, and for a Spider-Man movie, this is a fairly important victory. The hero's journey through the film and his literal physical movement should tell us who he is, and it seems Cretton finally let the camera enjoy the fact that this man could swing between buildings as naturally as he breathes. John Bernthal's Punisher also became a major talking point. His scenes with Holland were praised for their chemistry, and the contrast made immediate sense. Peter had believed that power came with restraint, while Frank Castle saw problems with bullets, more bullets, guns, and bigger guns. Their banter has effectively provided the movie with some of the best comedy, although the difference between their methods also gave Peter a moral challenge. And if I'm being honest, this is the kind of guest appearance I can support, because the character has directly tested Spider-Man rather than standing with him simply to remind us that this was also a Marvel film. Case in point, Hulk, whose absence from the movie would not have made much of a difference, but the same could not be said about the Punisher. And since we're already on the subject, Mark Ruffalo's Bruce Banner and Hulk were definitely more than a cameo, at least as far as screen time is concerned. But the most fascinating new entry has to be Sadie Sink, who plays the film's guarded mystery character, and her performance is another point of near universal praise. Almost every review that I read or watched has described her work as powerful, emotional, and in some cases, devastating. Why the last adjective though? Well, the problem was that her story appeared to take over a large portion of the movie. She didn't receive a proper introduction until around 40 minutes into the runtime, yet her character later became so central that Peter started to feel secondary inside his own film. So although her performance has managed to receive praise, the amount of space given to her character has proven to be extremely divisive. And this kinda sorta is what led to all the criticism. You see, Brand New Day may have promised a back-to-basics Spider-Man story, but Marvel still couldn't resist filling the room with more and more people. The film included Peter, MJ, Ned, the Punisher, Hulk, Sadie Sink's character, Damage Control, The Hand, Scorpion, and other threats across a 145-minute runtime. Some viewers loved the scale, while others thought the script had too many competing ideas. Tombstone received almost no meaningful time, Matt Gargan's return did not satisfy every reviewer, and Peter's physical transformation never received the depth that the trailers and official synopsis had initially suggested. The movie had plenty of material, although that material did not always serve Peter equally well. However, the negative response still seemed to agree with the positive side on a few key points. For instance, stuff like how Holland was strong, Zendaya gave the emotional scenes a sense of relatability that an everyday college kid might experience, and of course that the action had personality, and how the film has tried to transform Peter from a teenager into an adult. And in fact, the whole thing with the arachnid puberty can well be perceived as his coming-of-age story. So yeah, folks, that was pretty much it for this video. If you liked it, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Those 2 small clicks from you will help us tremendously in bringing you more of these marvelous videos. Stay safe and have a good one.